So, today we're talking about making a plan to get what you want and getting really clear about what that is and making choices that you feel good about. And nobody helps people do that better than my dear friend Mia Moran. So, it's only fitting that we're talking to Mia today after last week's episode with Melissa Lands because I met Mia through Melissa. So Mia and I attended one of Melissa's amazing business events in Los Angeles, and she was sitting next to me for the whole weekend, and we just hit it off like a house on fire. We were like sisters from another mother. We bonded over our love of beautiful fresh food and travel, and I just became fascinated with what Mia did because I just didn't consider myself to be a planner. I was spontaneous. I'm a go with the flow person. I'm not rigid. That's what I thought planning was, that you just wrote things down and you had to stick to it no matter what and you couldn't change your mind. And I had some limiting beliefs about that. And so when I communicated that to Mia, she said, well, planning's just making choices. I mean, you want to get what you want, right? And I said, yeah. And she said, well, planning's just deciding in advance that you're going to get what you want. I mean, you made a plan to come here this weekend, and in and around that, it's going to look the way that it looks. And you can be spontaneous within your experience of this, but you still know that you want to be here. And I really started to rethink this. And over the years, Mia's really opened my mind to the fact that it's not one thing or another, that making a plan is just getting clear about what you want and then putting the pieces in place to make those things happen and also feeling really good about it. So I really, really love her approach and how she really empowers people to make decisions from a place of peace and calm so that you can make the best decisions and be really present with what it is that you really want. And so I think you are just going to love what she has to say. So let's get the skinny from Mia Moran. Welcome, everybody. I am so excited to have Mia Moran with us on this episode. Mia is a dear friend of mine, and she is a busy mum of three. She is the most amazing productivity coach, and she is the creator of the Flow Planning System. She is a best-selling author of Plan Simple Meals, creator of plansimple.com, and the facilitator and ultimate coach of the Flow Productivity Program, Flow 365. So the reason why I wanted to get Mia on this episode is that I have seen Mia in her zone of genius so many times with thousands of people in my program, facilitating workshops with me and really helping women see what their obstacles are and making a plan that works for them. And I think the great thing about her approach to planning and making a plan for getting what you want is working from a place of peace and calm so that you make decisions that help you lean into the better parts of yourself. So she helps all kinds of women, female entrepreneurs, and she's really found this sweet spot of this balance between wellness, work, and family, and she helps other people do the same. So thank you so much for being here. Welcome, Mia.
Oh my gosh, thank you so much for having me. Can I just have you just come introduce me always? That's so fun.
Oh, I'm on tap anytime you want me. I
All right,
swear.
sounds good.
It just comes very easily because I've just seen you help so many people. So many things I want to ask you. Let's just dive right in. So I think what's really helpful, because your story really charts how you've really listened to your intuition and learned lessons along the way and how you continue to use them, not only to help yourself make decisions you're sure about, but also help other women. It's really one of your superpowers. So can I just start when you were running your really successful graphic design firm? You've been doing it for 10 years. You had 12 people working for you. Let's just share what you call the coffee cup moment.
All right, sounds good. So I'm not sure if that was an intuitive hit or like a wake up call, but anyway, and it's kind of embarrassing. But basically, what happened is that I was at my office, as I typically was, some day in the middle of the week, and it was like 3 o'clock in the afternoon, and I had definitely set up a life that I was proud of at the time. My now almost young adult children were all under the age of 5. And so I had made it a habit of going home and making them dinner. So it was like 3 o'clock. And I just remember looking across my desk, and I had somehow over the course of the day, stacked this stack of Starbucks cups over the course of the day. It was only 3. I had probably been there since 9. And I think there was 7 of them. And I just remember thinking like, okay, how have I gotten anything done today if I've been to Starbucks 7 times since 9 a.m.? Like that was my first thought. And then my second thought was like, and why on earth am I so freaking tired? Like, how could I have had this much caffeine? Like the promise of caffeine is that you're awake. And I just remember feeling so exhausted. And I was like, what is happening? And it was just like in this moment, I was like, shoot, like I need to get health. Like I need to change. I can't, this is not sustainable. This isn't going to lead to the business I want, like the family I want. Like there's nothing about this person who just drank 7 cups of coffee that is going to be the person I want to be for the future of anything. And so there was just that moment. And I was like, what next?
Okay, so what did you do next? What did you do? You decided it has to be me. I've got to change this. What did you do?
Literally, I looked up and the first person I saw right in front of me, which might not have been the person I chose had I like thought about it for longer than 4 seconds, I was like, what would you do if you needed to get healthy right now? Like that's literally, I think, what came out of my mouth. And he came back and he was like, I don't know, but a yoga studio just opened up down the street. And, this was, I don't know, 15 years ago. So it was before yoga studios were everywhere. So it was like a new thing. And I was like, okay, like I just like took it. I was like, okay. And up until this point, pretty much it was either work or motherhood. Like there wasn't a lot of like, I'm going to go do this thing for myself while there's a babysitter and somebody else has my kids. Like that wasn't a thing. But that day I was like, called the babysitter. I probably had to like pump some milk. Like, I don't know what I did, but I did all the things that I needed to do to get to this yoga class. And I just remember going in and really feeling like, oh my God, this is a lot of work and not very much fun, but also at the same time feeling like really, it was a hot yoga class. It was like 150 degrees or whatever.
Oh, you
and
went in hard for your
I
first
went in
yoga
like,
class.
yeah, it was like hot power yoga. And I just remember being like, oh my God, like, I guess I kind of want to be able to do this. I don't think I'm doing a very good job today. And I was just really drawn to the teacher. And I just want to say, like, I'm not an extrovert. I'm still an introvert, even though I talk all the time now. But like, I really at that point was like, flew my introvert flag and was not a big like talker. Like it just was really out of character for me to go up to the yoga teacher at the end of the class and introduce myself. But I did. Like I found myself going right up to her and being like, hi, I'm Mia. I'm exhausted. I had 7 cups of coffee today, whatever it is I told her. Like, I think I told her like everything in like 30 seconds. And she was like, I have the solution for you. And I was like, great. I kind of knew you would. Like, I just like, it felt like every step I had taken, it had only been 4 hours since I had this epiphany. And like every step I took felt so just right. So I went to her house the next day and she told me, and I also want to preface this with like, up until this point, me cooking meant that I called my husband and begged him to come home and make me food. I got takeout or I found the frozen food aisle. Like I was not, like, if I had met you then and you had told me like, just go grab me a bunch of kale, I probably would have cried. I would have gotten to the aisle and like tried to look for it and like been like, oh my God, there's 5 different kinds. I don't know which one to get. Like it wouldn't have not been okay. So I did not know how to cook. And this woman told me to go raw vegan. And I was like, great. I'm in it. Like I'm doing it. She told me to go raw vegan. She told me to do yoga every day. And she told me to go get these books that are all about deliberate creation. And I just like did all of it. I was like, I'll do whatever you say. And I just changed my life, like literally overnight.
Okay. So this is really amazing. So you started to feel really great. And so how did that lead into you wanting to teach parents how to help their children eat really healthy as well?
Yeah, so
That was
I
the
like
next step of your
literally could
evolution,
not
wasn't it?
believe how good I felt so fast. So, probably at the moment where I decided to get healthy, I was still pulling a little bit from the me who had heard about Weight Watchers at age 9. Like I had all that language going on in my head, but I just felt so good and I got rid of all these problems that I didn't even know I had. But then I was like, "Oh, that wasn't normal. That wasn't normal." And so I just couldn't believe that I didn't have that this knowledge like wasn't something that everybody would want to pass on and that would like that everybody would do. I was just like I was really mad at my doctors. I had the chronic ear infections and really bad allergies. So one of the big shifts that happened when I changed my food was I got off taking allergy medicine every day and I never had an ear infection again. And so I was thinking about my kids and like ear infections and all the things that I just thought were part of childhood. And I was like, why would I want that for them? And so that got me on this thing of like reading all the books I could on childhood. Luckily, I found the one that ended up being sort of the one early on. But I was just fascinated with anything I could about how I would pass this on and really keep it going in our family.
But okay, so here's what's so great about your story. So there's a lot of people that change the way that they eat and want their kids to eat better, and so they start cooking at home. You decided you were going to write a book about it, and you were going to travel across the country and teach thousands of other people how to do it too. So let's just talk through that next "it has to be me" moment where you went, "I'm going to write a book about this."
Yeah, I don't even really know where that came from. I mean, I'm a designer. Designers always want to write, like want to make things. I tried all these ways. Like I tried to have a blog. I tried to make a magazine. Like I tried all these things and nothing was really sticking. And I just like, I had this thing in the back of my head that had been playing for a long time. Like, I wonder if there's ever anything I could write a book about, like it just like, it was definitely in there, but I pushed it down a lot because I'm dyslexic and I did awful in regular school. It's why I ended up at art school and started a graphic design company instead of like something else. And so like it wasn't like it was there. It was a seed for sure, but it was never anything that I like logically would have acted on. So fast forward with all my energy that I was having, one day, it was actually the day after Thanksgiving one year, I decided to take the kids ice skating. So I took them ice skating. I am not from a place that I grew up ice skating, but we live in a place where there's a lot of ice skating. I grew up in the South in the US, so it was like hot. And I get out on the ice. A little kid like comes from behind. I slip, I fall, I shatter my whole arm like into many little pieces. And I had to get surgery to like, I literally was like Edward Scissorhands. I had like things sticking out of me after pretty intense surgery. I had never had surgery before that moment. So I had, anesthesia. I had these pins in my arm. It was my right arm. I couldn't move it. And at that point I had started like teaching a couple classes to parents on food. Like there was like little bits that I was doing and I just couldn't do any of it all of a sudden. And it was in that moment where I was like, the book thing, like I was just dreaming a lot. I was quiet and the book thing started like percolating a little bit. And I was like, oh, I wish I could do that someday. And literally I opened my inbox one day and there's this email that's like, we help you write your book. All you have to do is speak it. And I was like, that's perfect because I can't type. I was like, this is it. This is what I can do. And so I reached back out to this guy and I had a sales call and he's like, so we do all this stuff for you and it's $25,000. And I was like, that's not going to go over very well because I really have a very, I still had my design company, but in terms of the food business, it was still a pretty expensive hobby at that point. And so I was like, I don't know that I can do that right now. But I was like, but I really want to. And I just remember actually saying that out loud. I was like, I really want to do this. And this is like, is a really important piece because it's like, I really want to do this, but I wasn't like attached to it. And I think that that's really important. So it was like really clear, but kind of unattached or surrendered. And the next time I opened my computer, the next email I saw was, oh no, I know what happened. So I saw an email from one woman about how she was teaching a class on crowdsourcing. Meanwhile, the exact same morning, people were bringing me food and books, and somebody brought me this book called The Art of Asking by Amanda Palmer.
Great book.
Yeah. So good. I recommend it. And it was all about how she crowdsourced in this amazing way and how she learned to ask for what she wanted so she could have the career she wanted. And I was just like, I was like anesthesia, whatever. I was just so taken by this book. And I was like, I think I can do this. Meanwhile, this other woman was teaching a class about I was like, I'm going to crowdfund. I was like, I know a person, Amanda did it. Like all the things came together and I was like, I'm going to do this. And so I did it. I launched a crowdfunding campaign and I wanted to raise, I don't know, like $30,000 so I could pay this guy the $25,000. And we got like 70 or something. We got more. And
stop.
Yeah.
That's incredible.
Yeah.
Okay. So you write this book.
Yeah.
And then the next has to be me moment. It's got to be the book tour, right? You just decide I'm picking up my kids and I'm going across the country for a year.
I was like, I think this is what you're supposed to do when you write a book. And the publisher guy who I had paid was like, part of the deal is we can get you on TV. I was like, great. So when I take my kids in the car and we drive across the country, we'll do that. So so that's literally what we did. So I planned this book tour. Like, not everything fell into place as perfectly as I wanted to as I was doing it, but it felt so right. Like, not only for the book tour, but we didn't even talk about this, but my husband earlier that year had been hit by a car when he was bike riding and had had a concussion, and he was needing a break. And the kids were just in this moment in school where two of them were kind of having a hard time, and like everybody was kind of needing a break. And it was just like everything lined up. It's like, well, what if we just packed up the minivan and like went? And it was so good at so many levels. Two of my kids literally wrote their college essays about it, and they were like in fifth grade at the time.
Incredible. Yeah. So it turned out to be this incredible family experience for you.
Oh my
this
gosh.
Incredible growth experience.
Such a good growth experience. Such a good growth experience.
Now, I have heard you speak in our community for the 60-day reset about how you learned how to frame the ask and ask questions and listen to people and keep telling your story while you're on that book tour. Yeah. And that's a lesson that you keep, using and sharing with others. So can you just talk us through that a little bit? When you went on this book tour, you started meeting people from all walks of life, speaking at all these things all over the country, very diverse groups of people. Yeah. Can you just take us inside a little bit of that process, I mean, so what you learned?
One of the biggest ahas I had was one day in California, and I was looking out over the sea of the most beautiful women I had ever seen in my life. And in the back of my head, I was thinking, I was thinking I'd be talking to people who were in the drive-thru of McDonald's all the time, and my little tidbits of wisdom might really help. And I just remember looking over this crowd and just being like, why are these people here? I mean, really, that was my question. I was like, why are they here? They look like they have it all together. And so that's when I started asking. I was like, why are you here? And how can I help? How can I be of the most service right now to you? And it turns out that yes, people liked the beet dip and how to make kale chips and all these things to weave in with their kids. But what the real problem was that a lot of people had the inclination to go to farmers markets and, make home cooked meals. But literally, if they took out their phones, I started just asking people to show me their phone. And it was work finished, kids needed to be picked up. Already work needed to finish and kids needed, especially in California, there wasn't enough time, literally to go to get it, much less to get home, much less to cook dinner. And everybody was really pissed at all the magazines that told you could make dinner in 5 minutes, because that's simply not true when you're eating healthy. And so it was no, we need to figure out time here. Time is actually the problem, not the kale. The kale is not the problem. The problem is the time. And so that really got me thinking about, just what we're doing to ourselves as women. And I think our generation is the first one that's there's kids, but there's also parents that are in the picture in a different way and not being supported in the way that maybe they were generations ago. And we're busier, we're working more, plus we have the family, there's just so much more responsibility. And even food isn't as simple, right? Everything has gotten more complex, and there's just so many more things to think about. And I was like, oh, we need to be thinking about all the things. And I started just reflecting back on my life, and I was like, it's so interesting. When I'm thinking about my work and my business, I have this Google Calendar that I go to, but then there's my kids, and they are this stack of pieces of paper of where I'm supposed to be when, at which soccer game or whatever. And that's over here on the refrigerator. And then there's our health and meal planning. And for me, that was on the back of Post-its and receipts, but it wasn't nothing was integrated. So of course I wouldn't realize that the day I had a big meeting was also, a time and that my kids had something, and I really was hoping I could feed us a good meal, but there was literally no time. No wonder that happened, because everything was so, in different places.
So that's where that on the book tour was really you really started formulating this planner specifically for women.
Yes.
And again, though, again, a lot of us sit there and go, oh, gee, let me go and find a solution for that. Let me see if someone's done that can help me. You just decide, I'm going to be the solution.
Yeah.
right? I
Yeah.
mean, you just you listen, the whisper, and the whisper gets louder. What I love about the story about you being at home with the broken arm, and having to be quieter and slower, and just starting to really listen to your intuition even more, it got louder and louder until you just went, okay. And then you started listening to what, Sebastian and your kids needed, and boom, okay, we all kind of need this. This is
Yeah.
what, we're going to let go of this in order to make room for this thing we want more. So how did the planner grow into this planning system that you were going to facilitate this online and actually coach people through this process? How did that develop?
Well, I think like you just actually hit like what's at the core of it, of course, because you're you, which is
Oh.
like that in all these it has to be me moments. A lot of them were based in emergency. So like a lot of them were based in
Mm,
I was forced to slow down. But when I really started to
mm.
unpack them, because actually those were the 3 moments that I really was unpacking in order to make the planner, I was like, how did I write a book? How did I take my kids out of school? How did I change my health? Because that was the questions I was getting asked the most. And so I really started to pick those apart. And one of the things was I got stopped in my tracks and I couldn't get in my own way, basically. And I had to be quiet. And the second I got quiet, I got all the guidance I needed. And then I just had to learn how to actually act on that, because pretty much the second I heard go on a book tour for a year, I would have a conversation with somebody who would be like, that sounds so dumb. That's going to be so hard. Or like, why would you do that? Or you're just making your life so complicated. Like I would get all these things. So that happens really fast. And so I realized that the piece about the plan was really about how to stay the course. It doesn't have to do with like how to Jenga together all the pieces of your life. Any of us can do that. But it's really about how do I hear that there's this moment that I'm supposed to act on and actually act on it? Because that's the part that I think is really hard.
Yeah, and I think one of the really great things that I love about your approach is putting yourself in a place where you are very present. You talk about this a lot, and I love how you teach about making decisions not from a reactionary place where you're forced to do it when you're in an emergency where things are at DEFCON 1 or whatever, that you are actually you're really empowering yourself to really think ahead, put yourself in this centered place. So, can you talk us through that approach?
Yeah.
Because it was really born out of your own approach. So, I just really want to take everybody inside that process about what a conversation with Mia sounds like.
Yeah. Like in my own
If
head.
I'm frenetic and I'm freaking out and I've got all these things on my to-do list, I don't know what to do next, right?
Yeah.
How do I get myself into a
Yeah.
place
So
where I can go, okay.
like that. We start with that, the deep breath. Like we start with really coming into the now. Because in the now, nothing's wrong. Like right now, in this exact second, as you're listening to Tess and I talk, like everything's fine. You might press pause and go off, and all of a sudden you're like, shoot, I have this, and this to do. But like right now, as you're thinking, like right now in this moment, everything is okay. So the reason that I realize planning is so important is because we need to actually all planning is making choices. And we need to make choices like right now while we're calm, not when we're thinking that we're like all crazed, because then we make bad choices. So we don't want to like start taking action or make choices from that energy of crazy. And so that was like the first step. Like that was like the first thing.
I do can you share with everybody that phrase that you've shared in our community before, which is, what is it? That place where you feel like you're being chased by tigers? Am I
Yeah.
getting that right?
So it's like our nervous system. So it's like just nervous system work, which is like literally very often we feel like, well, a lot of times as women we feel like we're actually being killed or we're being chased by lions and tigers when all we're doing is like getting in the car to go to the grocery store. But it's like that same primal instinct comes in that somehow our life is at risk. And it
Mm.
feels really silly to a lot of us when we say it out loud or when we even think it to ourselves. And so then we just like, swallow it and don't tell anybody, because it's like, why would I be this scared to like go do this thing that's so menial? But
Look,
it's really true.
Yeah, you have helped me see this so clearly that I make everything an 11 when so many things are a 3 or a 2 or a 5 or whatever. But I'll just be really honest with all of you. I used to wear that I was not a planner. I'm spontaneous. I just go with the flow. Like it was like a badge of honor. Right. So when Mia and I met and I went, oh, I love what you do. Yeah. I just, it's so amazing because, I just don't plan, And then Mia just turned to me and she goes, well, planning's really just deciding in advance that you're going to get what you want. And in true Mia fashion, it was exactly the hook for me to go, oh, yeah, I think I need to become a planner. And that was it. I've just bought into it ever since. I mean, it was so powerful for me. Okay, so once we're at that place of not feeling like we've shut the tigers down and it's like, okay, in the present, I'm
Yep.
good, I'm safe. Then
Yeah.
what's the next step?
Then we actually get to take this step into the future. So, one of the biggest things about both getting into the present and like getting out of that frenetic state is that we're stepping out of making choices from our past, because any of the fear that we have about something is actually not right now. It's from something that already happened. So we first step into the present, and then the next step is vision, is what we call vision. But what it really is stepping into the future and starting to make choices from our future self that's already succeeded. So our future self has already like eaten all the good food, taken great care of her body, built a business, like created loving relationships. Like our future self is already there. So if we can just start to make choices from her place instead of from the past, then as we land there, like we've made our choices from a different sensibility.
Oh God, it's so key, isn't it? One of the other things that you said, I love how I'm quoting you back to you. I'm
Me
probably going to
too.
get it terribly wrong, but I love some of these things about I think often, and I really related to this. I push myself into the future from my past perspective,
Yes.
and you were saying. Think of yourself as pulling your future self pulling. Can
Yeah,
you
pulling
share
you
that? Because
forward
it was
instead of
it was
being
so helpful.
pushed. Yeah, so it's like she's
Mm.
just inviting you forward. Like you can like literally imagine yourself being pulled up the mountain by a rope or something, right? Like she's pulling you forward. Whereas often we feel like we're being pushed by all the burdens, all the limiting beliefs we've
Mm.
created, and it doesn't feel very good. So then we get stuck, like, and we literally like we have all these things we want to do, and it seems like all we need to do is the next one, but we can't even do one thing, much less five things.
Yeah, and that idea of just come join me. It's so great here.
Yeah.
We all love invitations. I love to
Yeah, and
RSVP to
she's
invitations.
us. So it's like it's not even like somebody outside of us, like she's us. So I spend a lot of time, I spend a lot of time like with her and getting to know her and writing, from her perspective and being in meditation, like meeting her. Because every day, every week, whatever, as I become the next version of myself, she's different too, right? I can access a different part of her.
Yeah. So besides the meditation, and if you're not a meditator like me, I do mindful meditation, and Mia has led, people in my programs through amazing meditations. I love the giant bird. Just get on the giant bird who's going to take you to your future self. Oh, let me tell you, I took to that little exercise like I can't even tell you. So we've done the centering, we've got the visioning. Can you just share with us some other exercises? Like we've got the meditation, the journaling to connect with our future self. What are some of the other strategies that you give people?
Like for this piece of being with your future self.
Yeah.
I mean, like I think it can just be as simple as just closing your eyes, and just even like sometimes when we're even just doing a 90-minute co-working session in my program, it's like just close your eyes and imagine 2 hours from now. Imagine done. Like just really see that. And now start having seen that instead of starting where you are right now, which is nervous that you're going to finish.
Oh, I love that.
Right?
Yeah,
So it doesn't have
that's
to
really
be
good.
like I'm always spending time going out 5 years and whatever, but it can be 2 hours. It can be like
Mm.
I can see what it's like at 5 after I've spent 3 hours really getting the work I need to get done, so that then I can turn around and have time to cook and be with my kids instead of lamenting about the fact that I haven't finished. And it's like, when you can tap into how you feel just even 3 hours later, you literally make different choices about what it is that you're actually going to do in those 3 hours. It's really interesting, but like, you take different action. You don't go check your inbox because you're like, I don't need to do that. I just need to write this thing.
Yeah. So, okay. So we've centered, we've visioned, we've connected with our future selves. I just love all these steps because they're so, I've seen you show it on the PowerPoint, these little quadrants, and it's so powerful. What's the next bit?
So then we get to make some choices, right? So then we really get to decide. So we get to decide what it is that we're showing up to. Like, and it's just, but it's really important. We're deciding from a whole different perspective. So that then we are making choices. And I guess there's a lot of nuances within that phase. Like, I definitely am a big believer of getting everything out of your head and onto paper, because when so much swirls in our head, I think it's harder to like see the patterns and see what's even there. So I always recommend doing what we call a brain dump and just like get it out of your head and onto paper so you can see it. And then we just sort of start to get smart about like deciding what we're going to prioritize. And for most women, it's like we have to really remind ourselves to start with us, and to start with what serves, like with how we can fill our own cup first. So many times we'll like be focused on feeding our kids well, or, I don't know, replying to a client or something, when really what we're needing is to make a presentation and feed ourselves well. And we don't realize that those other things will actually happen probably more successfully if we are taken care of in this way. So starting with those things.
I want to ask you about that because so many people, women specifically, feel guilty about taking time for self-care.
Yeah.
So, where, it's ingrained in our society that, self-care and narcissism are the same thing. They are not.
No.
So I know that you always, quote that, put your own mask on and then assist others. How do you help women get past that obstacle and let go of that limiting belief, or that they give themselves permission to take time for them?
Yeah, part of that I think is really being in everything we've talked about today, and really being clear of what self-care means to you, because part of the part of all of this, part of the centering and visioning is really so that all the choices you're making from the inside out instead of the outside in, right? So you're making choices from your internal guidance system instead of what like Instagram and Oprah and all the things are telling you to do. I mean, they all have great ideas. Like there's some great stuff right now on Instagram and Pinterest, but it's not all for us at every moment. And so like even in my 3 big stories, like taking my kids out of school, like there was a lot of imperfection in that. There was one kid who really didn't want to leave. There was another kid who probably could have used the time in school to feel ahead for the next year. My husband was in a job, so he couldn't be with us the whole time. So there was like a lot of imperfection in it, but at the end of the day, it really was an act of self-care. It's like what I needed to do to really take care of myself. And then what happens is everything sort of arranges around that. And I think one of the other things we think is that if we take care of ourselves, somehow we're sacrificing other people. But that's not true. Like we give everybody permission to take care of themselves, and then their worlds start to organize around them. So in this moment where I just might have been sort of like in this particular version of the story, I'm at the center, everyone had their own version. I just inspired them, and it really affected my kids in the most positive of ways. Literally, they wrote their college essays about it. So, but not in ways that I could have guessed or that I was like giving them. Like I wouldn't have known the ways that it really affected them. All I could do was take care of myself in that way.
Yeah, yeah. So, I mean, finding that balance between self care and care for others and allowing people to make room for their own growth is such a huge lesson in life,
Yeah.
right? And I mean, it's one that I think we all struggle with from time to time is, really finding that balance of self care and fun, the balance of self care
Well,
and care for others.
here's a good test. Like, usually, if we're feeling really like depleted in the fact that all we're doing is caring for somebody else, yet we're feeling like we're not doing enough, which is oddly a feeling a lot of women have. It's like, oh, maybe I need to do more because this other person's needs don't seem to be being met by what I'm doing. Yet on the other side of that, we're feeling depleted. It's actually the opposite action that makes a difference. Like, I see this every day. It's like if that same woman goes and takes really good care of herself, she can give different, like what she puts out to the other person is like at a whole other level, and that person can receive it at a whole other level. And it's different
Mm.
than like, okay, I'm going to give like a little bit more to this person, and like, and maybe that will just take a little bit away from me. But when we're like, oh, how do I really fill up, then it's like, oh my gosh, I can really give.
Yes, yes, I love that. So I'm going to jump around a little bit here
Yep.
because there's so much to unpack with what you just said. I want to go back to the fourth part of the
Okay.
process, right? So we've made our, we've centered, we've visioned, we've made choices, we've decided what we want to do. Let's talk about the follow through because I think that you're a quick start like me, and you really follow through as well. But you've had to really cultivate that process,
Yep.
and I think that one of the other big mic drop moments for me was when you said, actually achieving your goals is a process of deciding, but then redeciding and
Yep.
redeciding and redeciding and redeciding, and that's how you get to the follow through piece where you actually don't just decide I'm going to do this and then tomorrow you're just not going to do it. Let's talk about this follow through piece, how you help people do that in your
Okay, but
community.
I'm gonna take us back to the one little step in between, which I just want to make
Oh,
sure
oh,
it's okay. I just
do.
want to make sure everyone gets it because it's really
Okay.
important. Because so far we're like kind of in list making mode, which is where us women really thrive. We love making some lists, and it's actually a really creative process. And we tend to like doing it on post-its and old receipts and 5 different
Oh.
notebooks and all the different places. So if anyone can
No, I'm
relate.
the worst. And then I make a list, and then once I've crossed something up, I have to rewrite the list.
Yes, I'm like that too, because then
Yeah.
we want it all
Yeah.
neat and like perfection. Anyway,
Yes.
so
Oh.
what's really, really important, especially for us lists, so what's really important is that we get it into time. So anything that
Mm.
we're like deciding we want, we have to like match it to time. Now, this does not mean that you have to have a calendar and you know what's happening every second of your life, because that would make somebody like Tess not be able to breathe and really not be freedom seeking. But it does mean that, like, in advance, you know that you can or can't do something. Because how many of us have, like, gotten it to the end of the week and been like, "Oh my god, I'm such a failure, I can't do anything." But if you had have started the week and tried to put it in time, you will have realized, "No, I can't do all these things. I put 4 weeks worth of things into 1 week." And so, it's really important that we start to understand how our actions play out in time. Like, that's really what those women on the trip were like all wanting and needing, was to like just understand that, so that we can actually start to respond in a real way instead of just feeling bad all the time that we're not showing up in the way that we want to. So that's an important step. And for anyone who's like huge on like calendars and is always putting everything in your calendar, I find often those people need to go back to those beginning steps and just make sure that what's in the calendar is really coming from a place of meaning and from that inside place. Okay, so then follow through. So the thing about it is, and why I think it's really helpful to have support team camaraderie as we're doing this, is because we are changing and being different. So really, to me, this is so weird, but to me, the reason that we make a plan is not like so that we can stick to it. In fact, one of the reasons why I'm such a like fan of 90-day plans is because I think I'm sure that a year plan should not be fulfilled, because by the time we've done 2 months, we've changed, we've morphed, we've become
Mm.
somebody different, and we want something different. Like, our vision can grow. And so we want to be in a process that we're allowing ourselves to grow, and we're allowing things to consistently change, and we're starting to like rewrite the story, because many of us have been conditioned to believe that this is failing or backing out or not doing it, when really it's like, well, no, we just tried something and we got a lot smarter, and now we're pivoting or recommitting or deciding something different or making a different choice. And it's different when we're in action making those choices. It's when we're stuck in that old model of like, we have too many things to do and we can't move and we think a lion's running after us. That's not the same. But when we're actually taking steps forward because we're being supported to do that, we do get to show up and redecide. We do get to pivot. And one of the reasons I love putting things in time is because once they're in time, let's say I have a day and it's like, I have to do these. I really want to do these 4 things. Something is coming up that's preparing for, and then something surprising happens, like somebody gets sick or a meeting goes longer. I can literally take the things from my calendar and I can like move them. I can make choices of like where they're going to go. Like I see how much space they take up, and I can learn how to make them take less space, and I can like learn to delegate them. And so I have all these options all of a sudden, whereas before, when it's all stuck in my head swirling around in the endless to-do list, I have no way to move through them. So that process of continually checking in is super important, I believe, in following through, and having somebody in your life who can really see you for all that you're doing and mirror back to you and like reiterate to you, so that as you're making choices, there's positive feedback and containment around it.
Yeah, this community piece is so important. And that's why your community is so incredible. And those of you, who want to learn more about Mia's process, you can find her at plansimple.com. It's the Flow 365 program is so incredible. I know quite a few people in the program who are just achieving the most extraordinary things, because you have like these little workshops where everybody does their stuff together. There's accountability, there's support, there's love, there's camaraderie. We're just not meant to do it alone. That's something you say all the time.
Well, and the thing that I'm like, that's happening most often right now, which takes us back to the beginning of this, is like, I feel like I'm saying, just slow down. Like more than I've ever said in my whole life. It's just slow down. Like, what would happen if you just slowed that down? And what's happening is on the other side, there's all these miraculous things, because we've already proved that this is like the number one thing that helps us, like, hear our intuition, trust what's next, like, do the right thing, is to slow down. But it's really, I felt like when COVID happened, I was like, oh, like now we're going to learn, because we all got forced to slow down. And I feel like we got that lesson. And then I feel like in recent years, it's like we're turning it up again, and we're turning it up the volume like really quickly and really fast. And that lesson of slowing down, and please don't have to shatter your arm to do so, like, is so important and so critical to the more. It's like that, it's so critical to those things that are really like, that really matter to us.
Yeah. So what would you say your superpowers are? Because I think one of them's listening. Would you say that?
Yes.
Yeah, you're an amazing listener, like listening to the whisper of your heart, listening to your intuition, listening to your family members, listening to the women in your community that you're coaching. You've got a really incredible gift of listening, really taking it in, and then finding the solution. It's a real gift as a coach. What would you say some of your other superpowers are?
So when I can get quiet enough, I definitely have a pretty good connection to my intuition, sort of in an untrained, like young child way. So that is
Oh, that's
definitely
the
good.
best way though, right? No censorship.
Yeah.
Believing you can do anything. I mean, we all want to connect with that girl. Yeah. Yeah.
So that, I think, it's funny, over time, I've had that whole idea of being a quick start. Like I've a little bit had to come to terms with that being a strength. I mean, it is a strength because it allows me to, as long as I can figure out how to follow through, which is sort of why I created what I created. As long as I can figure out how to follow through, it means that I can have those moments where I'm like, oh, I'm going to take my whole family across the country, and I can, if as long as I can follow it, I allow myself to have those ideas, and start them. And in that case, I was able to follow through, which doesn't always
Yeah,
happen.
I want to pick up. Yeah, I want to pick up on something you said earlier,
Okay.
where you talked about being able to fill up your own cup
Mhm.
and practice self care, and then you're able to fully give to others.
Mm.
Talk us through how you strike that balance between filling up your cup, giving to others so that it doesn't take away from what you need to be giving yourself, because I think you've really mastered that balance.
Yeah, and I mean, that's probably been like one of my biggest life learnings. So if anyone knows the Enneagram, if you don't, you should definitely go take your Enneagram because it's very helpful knowledge. But I'm a 2, which means like that very naturally I'm a giver, right? And it's a strength. It's like a huge strength. And so I, in recent years actually have learned a lot about that strength and how it can really help in all aspects of my life. And then I've also, in that same Enneagram study, looked at the shadow side of it and, what it can do. And it can deplete you because you can overgive sort of at the cost of yourself. So I've done a lot of work, and we've actually folded it in, and like I feel like it's become part of just the planner we have, but it's also become part of our programming, is really listening to my body. I mean, I feel like that's been one of my huge lessons, and understanding when things are a yes and when things are a no. And the body does not lie. And it doesn't lie about when you need to take care of yourself. And it doesn't lie when you have the capacity to care for somebody else. And so that's definitely been a huge piece, is just listening to my body and allowing myself to even stretch further in the giving that I might have otherwise. And then also the receiving to myself, which, would be more the self-care.
Yeah. So, can you take us inside what that looks like or feels like a little bit? So,
Yeah.
your barometer for what a yes or a no is and what that feeling is inside your body. What does it feel like when it's a no? And what does it feel like when it's a yes?
Well, here's the thing. I think we all have a yes and a no, and I think it's different for everybody. So I feel like everyone has to be able to find that. So in recent years, I've really started to feel it like in my gut. Like, so when people say a gut instinct, but there was a long time where that was not how I felt it. But I literally now feel very warm in my gut when it's like a strong yes. And I get it more like shoots up like a lump in my throat when it's like a strong no. But a really easy thing that anybody can do. So I'm just going to give you all this.
Yes,
Have you ever
please.
done the standing pendulum? Do you know that one? So
Oh, yeah, yeah.
yeah,
Talk
so
everyone through
like
that.
anyone can do this, is if you just stand up straight and like, you have to know what's in front of you. Like, so there's like a wall in front of you, and you ask a question that the answer is yes or no to. So like, it's like, my name is Mia, or my name is Peter, right? Like like I know that my name's not Peter, and I know my name is Mia. So what you do is you start off with the yes, and you see where your body leans. You just close your eyes, you say, my name is Mia, and you watch how your body leans. Often a yes is forward for a lot of people and no is back, but you just really have to take that deep breath, and a lot of people are like, well, I'm just going to force it, but you really don't. So you have to be patient with yourself. You have to slow down, and then watch what happens when you say your name is something else, and see where your body goes. And then you can just start to practice that. And so if you're need to ask a question about, whether you should volunteer for this thing that you're not sure about, then you can do that same thing. Like, so you can use it for anything. I learned that originally actually for food. Like, do I really want this chocolate thing? Or like, do I not want this chocolate thing? And I
Mm.
just don't think the body lies in that way. So that's one thing, is the yes and the no. But the other thing that I think is really important, and is this idea of capacity and what we can hold. And
Mm.
I think we've lived in such an either or world, like that it's either like it's that thing of, I either take care of myself, or I take care of somebody else, or I take care of my own self-care, or I take care of my kids, whatever it is. And like that lesson of just, and I hold, like, I'm literally holding up, like I'm holding a beach ball right now, if you saw me on video. And it's like, one of the things I've very consciously tried to do in the past years, over the years, is like, how big can my capacity go? Like, if I take care of myself this much, then what does that enable me to give over here? Like, it's always a balance. And I used to think that, like, I used to try to keep it small because that's all I could contain. But as you start to practice one way or the other, it's really amazing what happens. So, like, for example, I just got back from 10 days of being in 2 different retreats. Like, I never would have allowed myself to do that even 2 years ago. And it's like, on the other side, like, my capacity to meet different people this week, like, I literally can't even explain it. I can promise you that every single client I've talked to has noticed it. My kids noticed it. My husband noticed it. Like, they can't put words to it, but they feel more seen because I allowed myself to be more held for that time.
Yeah, I love that. I love that. Just giving yourself permission to do that and then returning,
Yeah, and you don't
when
even have to think of it as returning. Like, I think the more we think about it, the worse it gets. It's like, right?
right.
The more we're really, like, trying to balance it, the worse it gets. But if we have that, it's almost like this act of faith that if we really take care of ourselves and we keep growing that the other side is going to grow with it.
Mm. Yeah, part of leaning into it has to be me, those moments where you absolutely know, yeah, this is what I'm going to do and I'm the person to do it, is there are only so many yeses to give,
Yeah.
and that a yes is often accompanied by a no
Yeah.
to something. We have to let go of certain things in order to lean into the things that we want more. So, what are some of the things the big things that you've had to let go of in order to lean into these things that you want more, or the things that you know are going to help you grow? What are some of those things, and were they difficult for you?
By the way, I just want to tell you that this is an exercise that I did in the last year that is so powerful. I recommend everyone do it, which is that, and it's based on a book that I'm going to forget the name of it. It's called The Gap or the Gain is the name of the book. And it's a very businessy book, but I think people can do this in any realm of their life. Is that I went back and I named every, like, chapter. So, like, the chapter where I wrote the book, the chapter where I was in college, like, I really went back, and it was like, what did I gain in that time? And in order to gain that, what did I let go of? And it was,
Mm,
like, so powerful to just, like, see that, like, see, like, and always it's like the things you let go of, you're like, who the hell cares after it's done? Um, a big one that relates to your world is I definitely have not had gluten or dairy in 15 years. And I can't tell you how many times people are like, you must feel so bad at that party. And I'm like, I really don't. Because what I gained, like, in that moment of clarity, I'm no longer, just to be clear for everyone listening, I am no longer raw vegan. But that chapter really did define so much of, like, so many things, including it's how I initially even knew that like the test existed. Like, I mean, I think that's how we met later, but I don't know if when we met I would have registered even to care, like, to know you, to want to know you more, if I hadn't had that moment. So it's like all these things are very interconnected. And so when we go back and we sort of put together those pieces, it's like, of course, like, I gave up dairy and gluten. It was
it,
like, it's not even
it,
a big deal.
Oh, listen, I'm gonna
You,
I'm gonna share with everyone and share with you, if I haven't before, Mia, about something that I've taken from Brandy, who is a member of the SK60 community. And she, went to this, fair with a whole bunch of her friends, and she was on the program, not eating gluten, not eating dairy, not eating, added sugars, and really wanting to get healthy. And she had spectacular results. And they said, "Oh, we're sorry that you can't eat this." And her response and perspective was just incredible. She said, "Oh, I can have it whenever I want to. I just choose not to today."
yeah, I love
And
it.
isn't that just the greatest thing? I said, "Brandy, I'm stealing that from you. I'm stealing and I'm making it my own because it's
Well,
fabulous,"
and
right?
that's part of the redeciding thing, right? Like, I haven't had it in 15
Yes.
years, but I didn't make a rule 15 years ago that I could never have it. It's just every day, if I weigh what my life is with it or without it, I 100% at this point, I'm going to choose my life without it because I don't want to be tired again like I
Yeah.
was then.
Yeah. Yeah, but also, yeah, that's delicious for about 5 minutes, and then I'm not gonna feel so great if you've determined that those 2 things are problematic for you. They're not problematic for everybody necessarily. But that thing of, yeah, but I wanna feel good more, and then I'm gonna
Yeah.
be able to do all these things, right? Which is exactly what you
You
do.
want to hear a
You're
really
you're
funny
such
one
a
that you
quick
don't
s Yeah.
do you want to hear a funny one of giving
Yes.
up though? Okay, so we didn't you don't even you
Yes.
might not even know this part of my story. My kids are like, "Mama, you sound really weird when you say this." So, it really has
Oh,
nothing to
tell
do
me
with
something weird.
it has nothing to do with what I saw, but it just has to do with that moment of knowing. So, when I was 16, I was at work, like I was working at a camp and I looked up and I literally saw feet coming across the thing. There was nothing about the feet like that mattered, but I just saw these like I saw a person walking and I just knew that whoever that was, I was marrying them. Like I knew it.
And was
So,
that Sebastian?
yeah,
You saw his feet.
I I know, which my kids are like, "Mama, it's gonna sound like you have like a foot fetish," but I was like, "No, it wasn't even that. It was just like I just like had this knowing in that moment. I was like, "Oh my god, that's so weird. I'm meeting my husband today," and like we
But
didn't even
but was
start.
it the rhythm of the way he was walking? Was
I
it the
have
shoes? What
no,
was it?
I literally have no idea. I have no idea to this day what it even was. Except like one thing I know
Ah.
is that I was in the South and I had been going to school in the North and like definitely there was different fashion sensibilities. And so at the moment I was in the South and he was wearing shoes that were more like what they were wearing in the North. And so like I do remember like connecting it like, oh, there's somebody here who's like those people. But like really
I
nothing.
feel
But
like we're in Game of Thrones now.
I know, but I just like knew. So in a sense, I gave up like
Wow.
and it's not like we started dating that moment, but I never dated anybody else. That's a
Wow,
confession.
and you've been
He's the only
together for
one.
decades now. It's a great love story. It is. It's amazing. So I mean, okay, I'm loving this. So you really go with your intuition. I mean,
I do.
you feel it and you do it, right? So is there anything that you wish you'd done sooner? Do you have any regrets? I mean, I love your philosophy about regrets, by the way. You'll have to share that with everyone. But is there anything that where you didn't listen to it and you just wish you'd listened to your gut and done it sooner?
Yeah, like so it's funny because I feel like the times that I look like okay, so definitely part of my belief system is that I got to here because of everything that happened, right? So I've kind of always had that belief system, which has to fold in all the disasters.
Yeah.
But and, who knows if, like, the same path would have led me, but, like, one of the noisiest times of my life was right when I was starting college, and I definitely went with what I thought I was supposed to do, and I ended up leaving. So I ended up leaving and needing to take a few years off, and then I found art school, which was my design degree. So it's like so what I can look back and say is like, "Oh, that time was really noisy and my voice was really missing in that moment." And then I didn't keep going. And actually with my business, weirdly enough, um from the very get-go, I was like, women need someone to invest in them for a longer amount of time. I was just joining
Mm.
3-week course after 6-week course. And I thought that at the very beginning, and every coach I had was like, you can't sell that. You can't sell a year. And I just didn't listen. So I did listen, like, because I thought they were smarter than me. So I
Mm.
kept trying to do this. And
Mm.
then eventually I was like, this makes no sense. And I'm like 2 years ago, I was listening to a talk of one of those coaches, and she's like, you definitely should sell a year or 2 years. So it's like, everybody comes into their awareness when they want to. But like, I wish I had have trusted that, like, I knew what I wanted to give and, like, what I was here to give over other people in business way earlier. Um,
Mm.
so I
Yeah,
do that's something I think about often.
yeah, I find that too. When I do not trust my gut, I screw things up,
Yeah,
right? And when I just go with my gut, we can figure it out.
yeah.
I really
And
love
it
that story.
feels
Thank you
better.
so
I
much for
mean, you
sharing.
can do really if you trust your gut, That's not to say
Yes.
things are easy, right? Like, often we're
Yeah.
doing things that are way harder and, like, cause us to give
Mm.
up things like Netflix and whatnot. But it's like there's more purpose behind it. There's more, like, why behind it, and so that really, like, again, it's the vision of the woman pulling you up the hill. It's like the same thing. It pulls you forward a bit.
Yeah, the why. The why determines the what, determines the how, determines the who, determines everything, right? The why. Why are we doing this? Which goes right back to your centering and visioning and everything. So, Mia, to close today, and I mean, we could talk for hours,
Of
always, the two
course.
of us. Um, Going back to what you were saying about trusting your intuition and what you feel is the right path, what would be your advice to everybody listening to this conversation? Because we've all got a dream in our heart where we're just not quite sure we could get there or do it, or we've got the chops, or we're scared of failing, or whatever it is. What would you say to somebody sitting there who's got this big dream in their heart? What would you say to them to take action, to go after it?
So, from all the people I've met, even those who, like, know it in their heart, but I find that there's probably gonna be someone listening who doesn't think that they even have the dream as we're talking about the dream right now. So, to
Mm,
me, the thing that's most important is start to try to really answer that question. And I personally like writing, but you could talk to yourself. You could make art. I mean, there's lots of ways that you could do it. I would not recommend talking to someone who loves you, which sounds really weird, but like, to me, this is a more intimate thing with yourself at first, and then you bring in other people. Like, you could bring in somebody who's like a coach or a therapist, but I wouldn't bring in, like, sometimes spouses and mothers and best friends seem like a good person to tell our dreams to, but like, they see those lions and tigers coming just like we feel them because they're so close to us, and they might reflect that back to you sooner than you're
mm,
ready for. So the thing that I love
interesting.
doing is
Yeah.
just answering this question, what do I really want? And like, that really is so in all caps and 5 times. It's like, what do I really, really want? And it's like, if money wasn't an object, if the kids weren't this age, if I could have whatever house I wanted, if I didn't go get that damn degree, if, like, if I didn't have the same parents I have, if I hadn't gone with that religion for all that time, it's like, what do I really want? And nobody has to read this. But the more that we can clearly get that out and just really let it evolve, like, this isn't like you could probably go sit down for 30 minutes and have it all out. Like, for me, it's more like a practice. It's like, give yourself a month, give yourself some time. Watch what happens if you give yourself permission to keep asking yourself this question, because it will grow as you give yourself more and more permission. And that's the starting point. Like, you need to be connected to that in order, I think, to make any change, because otherwise it feels random. And all those fears have less, like, have can win easier. Once we really get clear on what we really want, there's like nothing for there's nothing for the lions to grasp onto, like, because we're stronger.
Oh, I love that. Oh, Mia, love talking to you always. Thank you so much for joining us today. You can learn more about Mia and join her community at plansimple.com. So much, just so many great nuggets there. Thank you so much.
Oh, thank you for having me, and thank you for everything you do, because like, literally all the food stuff that you teach was that first one of those first pivotal steps after my husband that really got me,
Oh.
like that changed everything.
Yeah, well, yeah, just thank you for helping people create their path to getting what they want. It's so incredible. So yeah, we will catch up soon.
It sounds good.
So many mic drop moments from that conversation. That achieving your goals is a process of deciding and redeciding. That you don't just decide once. You've got to keep redeciding. This is what I want. And getting clear about what you want, but not attached to only one way of getting there, that you can change your mind. And making choices from the present. not the past that's got all the fear and the history, and stepping into your future self and allowing that person to pull you to where you want to be, as opposed to pushing and feeling like it's really hard and you're not going to get there. Making choices from the inside out instead of the outside in, and making choices from your internal guidance and intuition, and giving yourself permission to do that. When she talked about the brain dump of getting the things that you want out of your head and onto paper so that you can see it, and the value of that, and that the vision doesn't have to be 1 year, 5 year, 10 years, the huge thing in the distance. It can just be 2 hours from now. Just imagine it done. Imagine getting that one task done. The bit about priorities, where she talked about it's got to start with you and giving yourself permission to take care of yourself first, because then you have more capacity to hold everything, and you can give on a whole other level and receive on a whole other level. And the value of slowing down, getting quiet. When she said the second I got quiet, I got all the guidance I needed, then you're able to tap into your intuition, trust what is best, and do the right thing. And then when you get quiet and slow, just really listening, asking yourself, what do I really want? When she said once we get clear about what we want, there's nothing for the lions and the tigers to grab onto. The fear, doesn't have anything to grasp on, because we're stronger, because we're really clear about what we want. That really resonated with me. And listening to your body, that it doesn't lie. You get really strong signals about what your yes is and what your no is. You just got to give yourself permission to listen to that. When she talked about the gap and the gain, thinking of her life in chapters, what she gained and the lessons, and feeling gratitude for all of it, but just noticing, where was my voice missing in that moment? And how can I use my voice now? And just taking up that lesson, that really resonated with me. Her philosophy about regrets, that I got here because of everything that's happened, and it's got to fold in all of the disasters. We're just learning and growing and looking for those opportunities. So, immerse yourself in Mia's world. She's got an amazing podcast, Plan Simple. She interviews fantastic people. Her program, Flow 365, is extraordinary. I have watched her help so many people in my programs at Skinny 60 and the Decadent Detox get out of their own way, get really clear about what they want, and make a plan to make choices they feel good about. So, yeah, immerse yourself in Mia's world. It is a beautiful place.
I want to hear about your It Has to Be Me story. So head on over to ithastobeme.com/stories to share it in our free community. You can also join the conversations we're having about this episode and others. I'm Tess Masters. Join me next week and we'll dive inside another great story to help us go from dreaming to doing.